All right, can everyone see this okay? I assume everyone can if I don't
Perfect,
hear.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Marna. So hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this TC211 Standards in Action seminar and to listen to this talk regarding Canada's ISO story. This talk today will be about the future of Canada's use of standards and Canada's past and future involvement in ISO and other standards organizations. Today, the talk will include some of the standards organizations that Canada, Natural Resources Canada, and the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation is involved in under GeoConnections. And for the historical context of this talk, a lot of it is from former convener Doug O'Brien. So I thank him for providing input on that. Doug is retired now, but is active in ISO as we're all aware. And he provided me with a lot of the historical aspect of ISO's involvement because frankly, I wasn't alive at the time, but when ISO was basically started and the standardization initiatives related to TC211 really came to fruition. And so standards, although it is something that is not widely talked about or known to some outside of our arena of expertise, is, in my opinion, the backbone of the fluid movement of things. And so that aligns a lot with many of the comments that were given in the video that we just saw. And think of the difficulties of moving traffic or cars, or if roads and signs were not standardized, or difficulties related to using electricity for appliances if plugs were all different sizes, right? As Doug had mentioned, it's the backbone of civilization. The same holds true for data and geodata with a spatial component. If things are not distributed or used in common formats or ways, it makes them more difficult to use or even understand in most cases for those who are unfamiliar with the information or data provided. So when we talk of standards, they are a norm for a repeatable task or a norm for a created method, process, or practice or outcome. In a way, it is an agreed upon way of doing things that involves people coming together like us today and agreeing on direction and things. And sometimes that requires a lot of negotiation or communication. And it is usually performed by an organization that brings these people together, like the organization today we're involved in, the International Organization for Standardization. It is important to note that certain standards organizations share standards. And so I've noticed in recent involvement that sometimes different organizations refer to the same standard using different names or different references based on that organization they're most accustomed with. And this is the case in some instances with TC211 and OGC standards, for example, where we have OGC's Web Map Service, which is ISO 19128, and the Web Feature Service, which is ISO 19142. And so I think it's important when we're working in these international environments and different regions, people may find this confusing. And so oftentimes when we're sitting around the table and having these discussions in the international environment, it's something to be pretty cognizant about. Relating to Canada's history, standards are helpful for us for moving things around more easily, making things more interoperable. For example, if data is organized in a more easily understandable way, it makes it easier for people to use it that are not experts. The first Canadian GIS, or Geographic Information System, was established by a UK-Canadian scientist, Dr. Roger Tomlinson, who was working with the Canadian Land Inventory in the mid-1960s. Internationally, this has been recognized as one of the first geographic information systems. This land inventory was developed because it was impossible to build a land inventory out of paper maps, right? And to be able to extract statistical data from it. And later years, there was a second version envisioned, but it was difficult to build up this second version that was made earlier, because there was a lack of standards that existed for the previous version. And so this was a bit of the motivation towards Canada's interest in geospatial standards. And so, as I mentioned before, Doug O'Brien from IDON Technologies from Canada, together with David McKellar of the Canadian Department of National Defence, wrote the first proposal to establish TC211 to create international geostandards. And there was Henry Tom of the US National Bureau of Standards, who worked to include participation of the Pan American Institute of Geography and History and other equivalent groups in other parts of the world, including many countries from Asia. And at the same time, the Comité Européen de Normalisation in Europe was developing Pan-European standards. CEN was led by Olaf Ostensen of Norway and Francois Sage of France. And so prior to TC211, there were many different diverse standards developed by different organizations in various countries, all with varying purposes and formats. Some international organizations such as NATO, Defense Geospatial Information Working Group, and the IHO, International Hydrographic Organization, developed ways of doing this, doing these standards to address their needs in the 1990s. One of the major developments was the creation of the Digital Chart of the World, four-country project led by US with Canada, the UK, and Australia. Esri was the prime contractor to the US government, and IDON to the Canadian government. And this led to the creation of a set of operational standard specifications that became part of DigiWig, DigiWig's Digest, the Digital Geographic Exchange Standard. And at the same time, the Open GRASS user community extended their common work on the open source GRASS software to the establishment of open data access standards and formed the OGC, as we know today, or the Open Geospatial Consortium. This has now become a major worldwide industrial and academic consortium whose standards and implementation specifications interwork closely with those with ISO. So the OGC introduced the concept of the model-based standards, and the initial plan of work for the first 20 standards from ISO TC211 was taken from the work plan from CEN 287. Again, this is information that Doug was most kindly able to share with me. Later at the Oxford meeting of TC211 in 1998, bear with me. I'm back on my right slide. In 1998, imagery, gridded, and coverage data work was added to the work plan for TC211. And that work plan has since expanded to include 80 published standards and over 20 in development. And so there is a close collaboration with 37 external liaison organizations, and in particular with the UNGGIM, United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, which we'll touch on a bit in a few minutes. So in the now or present day, we work with ISO and many other standards organizations by building what is referred to as the CGDI, or the Canadian Geospatial Data Infrastructure. So with SDIs, we not only use ISO standards, but standards from other organizations. And the connections of this Canadian Spatial Data Infrastructure are promoted by the GeoConnections program within Natural Resources Canada, which is our Canada's head mapping agency. This program is a national program that includes promotion of standards. So we're about promoting standards to the community and people within the population. We support innovation and collaboration on infrastructure solutions as well. And so we do that through promoting what we call the SDI concept, which we're all fully aware of. And this system is obviously based on standards that enable usage of geodata and services in real time. In this program, we are mandated to advance the Canadian infrastructure data policy standards and technologies, resources, and collaboration needed to make this happen, both domestically and internationally. And this is achieved through partnerships and investments that meet the needs of the public and address federal priorities such as climate change, risk mitigation and things like that. A major contributor to CGDI as we are today is working together on is the International Organization for Standardization. It's one of the largest in the world. It's based on a model of country participation. And here we have people who participate in the committees that ISO has to develop standards. So as myself and the convener for Working Group 6, we sit on the imagery working group, and Canada leads the imagery working group as well. And I had mentioned that. And we also work in geodetics, the accurate measurement of the Earth, and have members that sit on other working groups, including Working Group 7. So 38 countries participate, as we know, in ISO. And there are many standards that we utilize in Canada from ISO. We use the 19115 metadata standard, both the previous version, and we're starting to use the more recent version in some of our applications and systems. And ISO's 1913 XML schema implementation, we use that. And as well, this is done in such applications for RadarSat imagery within what we call Canada's Earth Observation Data Management System. And we all, within our country as well, we're very, very accustomed to using 19128, 2005 version. A web map server interface for sharing maps on the web, and that's done through such platforms as the Federal Geospatial Platform and what we call our Open Maps platform through the federal government. We use web feature services, so 19142, as well as 19123, ISO 19123 for coverages. For sharing data over the web, and we do so in such applications as the Canadian Hydrographic Service bathymetry products. So data related to the bottom of our near oceans and intercoastal areas. Canadian, the forms, we also use standards related to sensor web enablement. And we do so for transportation of goods to market and by rail. So for example, companies use sensors to enable rail supply chain optimization for delivery of goods to market. An example of this that I've seen has been related to potash in Canada. So we have a strong policies to enable open and easy access to data, and that includes geospatial data. That's part of our policy platform. For a country that's an intermediate power with a relatively small population and a large landmass, Canada ranks high in our global rankings for open data. Such data is available through the World Wide Web Foundation. Our access point to data is the FGP, opendata.ca, which can be browsed by subject or keyword. And a simple browse under that platform for nature and environment results in over 72,000 records for geospatial information. So the FGP is a Government Canada internal website where the government's most relevant data can be found easily and viewed on maps to support evidence-based decision-making and foster innovation. So we find that our backbone of this platform are ISO and OGC geospatial standards based on web services and ISO metadata standards with a Canadian applied profile referred to as NAP and HNAP. So our North American profile and harmonized North American profile are both components that have been used in Canada, notably the harmonized NAP for FGP. The FGP allows for the integration of economic, social, and environmental geospatial data from multiple departments and agencies to better support location-based decision-making on a range of complex issues. And so we're working now towards, I touched upon our future direction is to build upon open government and open data initiatives to further the FGP Open Maps portal, and the vision that is being discussed and moving towards is creating a Canadian geospatial platform. So stay tuned to see this future potential implementation. As well, we mentioned previously, we work closely with the OGC. The OGC has over 500 members and leaders in geospatial involved in the consortium, some of which are major companies and government bodies. And Natural Resources Canada is a strategic member, which means we are given the opportunity to develop strategy with OGC. And it provides us access to the standards, technology, resources, and the people working within OGC. And it's focused on developing practical initiatives, exploring new standards, and implementing them. As well, in our portfolio of standards that we work with, Canada and Natural Resources Canada is also a participant in the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, with its mission to lead the web to its full potential. And specifically, we have some world leaders in the development of maps for HTML or MapML, hypertext markup language, the language of the web. With MapML, we are working to standardize maps in browsers. So the vision and the work that's being done is to allow for the flexibility to drag a map web service from a feed and drop that into a web browser to view it directly within a web browser. And the vision here, or the application here, is to allow any user to view geospatial data, just not experts, developing the next generation of spatial technologies for the web. Another important organization we work with and that uses standards is the Arctic Spatial Data Infrastructure. It's a multi-country collaboration that has developed a spatial data infrastructure for the Arctic for mapping and visualization. And the key here is that it's open and free. The standards developed by the previous organization serve as the backbone of Arctic SDI, including, importantly, ISO standards. Canada is one of 8 participating nations. And the benefits of supporting and participating in the Arctic SDI include the technology and data access needed to monitoring and analyzing this important region of the world. Using science-based data, and this collaboration is a very good example of diplomacy. A large portion of the Canada is found within the Arctic region, and managing this area sustainably and equitably for its people and inhabitants requires cooperation, and it requires technology. And so Canada is an active member of Arctic SDI, which is largely based on TC 211 standards, and is supporting what is being built now, which is the latest strategic plan for building a standards-based digital Arctic. So that's the vision being developed now, is the view of developing a digital Arctic for the North. This vision being developed, which we are hoping the world community will support through cooperation, is the development of a digital Arctic or digital twin to effectively manage this sensitive region through cooperation and diplomacy. And the ASDI builds best practices of standards and their implementations and data flows for participants, and has some very strong linkages to the International Hydrographic Organization and Arctic Regional Marine Spatial Data Infrastructure Working Group, ARMS-DWIG, and the Arctic Council. So there's a link to the portal. If people haven't heard about it, you can click on the link to find out more and see the portal itself. Finally, we also participate and support in the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, known as UNGGIM. And this is a UN initiative to foster the development of geospatial information and technology. And this includes standards and their use. And so Canada collectively participates in meetings, responds to requests for support and policy development. And we support developments of documentation to help people, countries develop their SDI and geomatics capacity. And Natural Resources Canada coordinates this at the federal level for Canada. And much like the other involvement and leadership, our involvement here is to support trends, show diplomacy, and improve sharing of experiences and knowledge through leadership in SDI. So I thank you for taking the time to see some of the standards, initiatives, and organizations that Canada, Natural Resources Canada, and the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation and Geoconnections program is involved with ISO standards in general, and geospatial. I hope you enjoyed this history talk, and as well what our future direction vision is. So here are the members of GeoConnections team that make a lot of this collaboration happen. Just not myself, but there's a great group of members and leadership that support this collaboration. And I thank you, and I wish you a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.